Facts.
All right, lots going on for sure. Mark Carney is in town. He's at the Irving Shipyard, and he's making an announcement talking about spending billions and billions and billions of dollars. That's what politicians do when it's election time. And, he's talking about submarines and defense spending, and this is obviously something that's important. But look, it's election promise time, and the Confederation Bridge. Taking the tolls off the Confederation Bridge. I think both parties announced that yesterday, talking about cuts to income tax and on it goes. But to me, the number one ballot box issue remains, what do you do about Donald Trump and what do you do about the impending tariffs? To me, that is the overarching number one issue that I will be considering the most heavily when deciding on who I'll vote for. And I can honestly tell you at this point, folks, I am undecided. Probably because I'm not really sold on either or any of these candidates. Certainly not Jagmeet Singh for a variety of reasons. And Poilievre's got his baggage, and Carney, I've got concerns about it as well. So it comes down to who I think will deal better with Donald Trump and the impending tariffs, and that constant threat to our country, that existential threat coming from south of the border. To me, that is the number one ballot box issue. What is your ballot box issue? That is one of the questions that I'm going to ask you when we open the phone lines. Between 11 and 12. Also, do you believe the polls? Because the polls are all indicating, and I say all, I mean every poll that I see anyway, are indicating that the Liberals are surging ahead and in some cases well ahead of the Conservatives. And in particular here in Atlantic Canada. So do you believe the polls? What do you think about polls? Are they accurate? If so, why has Carney motivated so many to forget and forgive what was a pretty dismal record of the Liberal Party had on affordability, homelessness, inflation? The carbon tax was immensely unpopular, runaway debt, bloated public sector, scandals after scandal, including the WE scandal, the two Randys, the Arrive scam, Jody Wilson-Raybould, and I could go on with the scandals. And it looks to me like Trudeau has become the fall guy for all of this. All of the things that were wrong with the Liberal Party seem to have gone away with Justin Trudeau, who was immensely unpopular, probably, I would say, the most unpopular prime minister in my lifetime at the end of his stay, which is amazing when you look about where he came from and how it all started with sunny ways. And anyway, lots to talk about. And Poilievre, of course, why has he been unable to transfer all of that onto Carney? Because to this point, he's not been able to. So those are some of the questions that I'll ask you to weigh in on when we open the phone lines. As mentioned, in about an hour's time, I'd like to thank Vanessa Veinotte as well. On the other side of the glass at the control board's doing a fine job, as always. Now, to help us unpacking some of this is Lori Turnbull, Dalhousie University Political Science Professor. Lori, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate it, as always.
Anytime, Todd. Thanks for having me.
All right, no problem. So the ballot box issue, what's the big ballot box question in your opinion?
Well, I think it's largely like uncertainty, like not sure what's going to happen next kind of thing. And so I think that everything kind of fits into that, like the threat of tariffs, Trump's garbage about the 51st state. That all kind of makes people feel like, yikes, right? Like what's going to happen? How are we going to deal with this? And it entwines with those other domestic issues, right? Like if we have tariffs, that's going to obviously raise the price. If we have a tariff war, it's going to raise the prices of things. We're going to have an even worse affordability crisis. The supply chain is going to be affected. Jobs are going to be affected. People's purchasing power is going to be affected. Like all of that stuff is going to get worse. And so it's not like it's, I think that false dichotomy between foreign and international interests and policies and issues versus domestic, like we need to just throw that out because it's all entwined. It's all going to affect each other.
Why do you say it's a false dichotomy?
Because global issues and domestic issues are connected. I don't think we can put them in two different buckets, right? If there are tariffs, if our relationship with the U.S., which you could put in that international bucket and say, look, this is kind of an outward issue. This is Canada's place in the world, and our trade partnerships and all that. I mean, they matter because they affect us at home. They affect our domestic policies. They affect our economy. They affect our ability to provide the programs we want to provide, right? Like, I mean, what if this mess with the U.S. lasts a long time and we don't pivot? How will the federal government have any money to transfer to the provinces to do healthcare?
I guess I'm just a bit surprised that's not more gaining more of the narrative when it comes to all of this from the leaders when it comes to Donald Trump. Is it just because I don't know? Why do you think, or do you feel as though it's getting sufficient oxygen?
Okay, so I think the leaders, like, they want to address people's concerns about Trump. They want, like, that's the kind of dominant narrative. Mm-hmm. And I think for someone like Carney, it really fits his, the uniqueness of his candidacy. So say imagine the counterintuitive, counterfactual, like, say this never happened. Trump never got elected.
Right.
None of this has anything to do with what we're talking about now. And then there would still be pushes for Trudeau to leave, and maybe Trudeau leaves, and, maybe then it's not as clear a path for Mark Carney. Maybe there would be more of a discussion about who would be the Liberal leader. But I think because of the Donald Trump situation, Carney's CV, his experiences, his role as an economist, a banker on a global scale, that's really lifting him up. And so, of course, he wants to talk about that. And he's putting everything through the lens of sovereignty and economic independence. He's talking about, like, Canada, like, the elbows up, that's very galvanizing. Canada being the master of our own house, no one's going to push us around. Like, those sorts of campaign messages are really powerful.
You think with the whole Trump thing and the association with Poilievre and Trump and being Trump-like, that to me is really, and whether for good or for bad, whether it's justified or not, to me, that is really hurting Pierre Poilievre right now. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Danielle Smith's comments helped him at all.
Brutal.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Boy, like, that was not helpful. And Carney just has to stand there and laugh, right? And be like, yep, I can see the alignment that she's drawing between Trump and Poilievre. And that's what I've been saying too, right? And before that, I found Carney was getting more questions about, why are you saying that Trump is like Poilievre and Poilievre is like Trump, right? And Carney was, like, having to explain that and defend that. But now you don't hear that question as much anymore because even the conservative politicians are putting that link together. And so, does that mean that Poilievre, that's the only question he's going to get and that's going to tank his whole campaign? No, but it's like, now this is a weight he has to carry around.
Mm-hmm. Email here from Mark says, young people are concerned about affordability, not Trump's tariffs, and most experts are missing that point. But again, I think they're connected in a big time way. I mean, if these tariffs could really, really hurt and exacerbate affordability issues. So to me, they are connected. What are your thoughts?
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, and that's why we care, right? Like, it's not just that we don't want tariffs because they hurt our feelings. It's because it's going to affect our economy. And some sectors will be affected immediately. And others in other jobs and everything else will be affected later. But if overall we start getting hit with this stuff and we're not able to run our economy as we did before, and if he goes through with all this, right, like, Trump's all over the place. Who the heck knows what he's going to go through with? And he says something, then he takes it off, and then he says, oh, no, we're just going to do 10%. Like, okay, but this stuff could have a big effect, especially if it goes on for a while and we try to defend ourselves and then he does something worse. Like, this is not a good recipe for our economy at all.
Yeah, for sure. And here's another email from Noel. He says, these tariffs will be sorted out in months, if not weeks. What we can't afford is another 4 years of liberal governance with high taxes, no trade with China, India, or Europe, no growth, no using our resources to get our country moving. So I think the point that Noel's making is that a lot of the issues that would have dogged the Liberals, people are taking their eye off the ball, I guess, and I guess quick to forgive a Liberal Party just because. So is Trudeau the fall guy here? It looks like that's what it's looking like to me. Trudeau has become the fall guy.
Oh yeah, I think so. Right, like, and it's interesting because there was so much of a push for Trudeau to leave, right, both inside and outside his party. And now it's almost like that's like a century ago. Like people are just kind of, that was that. Now we're focusing on something else. And I get it, right? We're in a bit of a situation here. I get why people are looking forward, and that makes total sense. But what does it mean for a prime minister to be accountable for the things that happened under his watch? And does accountability mean that, Trudeau was kind of pushed out and now he gets to, like, this is part of his legacy, is, the fact that he is taking the fall for all this kind of stuff. But is that really accountability? I think Poilievre certainly wants to put a lot of this stuff on Carney and say, look, it's not enough, essentially. It's not enough for Trudeau to walk away. We want the whole government to be defeated. We want to start fresh. But I think Carney's rejoinder to that is, I am a new government. So they both want to push the change card. They both want to harness that change momentum. And I think that's what it's all about.
Like, I often hear people defending the Liberals saying that all of these issues were a cause of COVID, and they're not unique to Canada, inflation and affordability and homelessness and all that, and that's all true. With that all said, wouldn't it be nice to have perhaps a government that would steer us in a better direction than the rest of the Western world? I don't know if that's a past, that everybody else made bad decisions and everybody else is in a mess, so therefore that's justified that Canada's in a mess as well. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I take those points. COVID happened to everybody, and some countries ended up in much worse predicaments than we did. And, the Trudeau government couldn't control the fact that there was a pandemic. I get it. However, I think in the aftermath of COVID, the governments are responsible for how they handled that, how they handled the economic crises that came out of it, how they handled the polarization in society, the proliferation of misinformation and disinformation, and how that affected people. And I think, frankly, Trudeau was just as excited to use, or just as willing anyway, to use wedge politics as Poilievre was. Yeah. And we can see the effects of that now. I think that's one of the reasons that Trudeau, like, his popularity really sunk after COVID, is when he started using that rhetoric about the tinfoil hats and that stuff. That showed that he didn't care about people. I'm sorry, I'm being a little bit harsh here, but it suggested that he didn't care about people who didn't vote for him. And I'm sorry, like, you're the prime minister. No, you don't get to do that.
How do you think Mark Carney is wired? Do you think he's wired differently than Trudeau in that way? In that sense, does he have potential to grow the tent? Obviously, he must.
Oh yeah, I mean, like him or not like him, whatever. He's not like Trudeau. He's a completely different cat. Yeah. And I think the fact that Trudeau's a lifelong politician. Carney's not. He's public facing. Yeah. He's been, it's not like he's been in a cubicle for his life. He's been very public facing, but this idea of trying to build a vision to bring people around it and go out and shake hands and sit with people and talk about their problems, like, this is a new game for him. I think because of the size of his win with the Liberal leadership, and because, hey, it's easy to bring the party together when you're doing really well. I think he's got the Liberals behind him. There's no question. What he's trying to do now, it seems to me, is go for those centrist voters that have been orphaned over the past while. People who have seen the parties on the opposite sides of the spectrum, and it's like, where are those progressive conservatives? Where are those red Tories? Who do they vote for now? And we've seen some startups, right, like Christy Clark, Dominic Carty. Those people have talked about that center ice kind of project. Rick Perkins, like, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Like, it seems like Carney read all that, and now he's like, hey, there's a constituency here that I could bring to life. And it seems to me that's exactly what his policies are doing. They're very different than Trudeau's. They're more like Poilievre's, to the point that Poilievre is complaining because Carney's stealing his ideas.
And Atlantic Canada has strategically become quite important in what could be a very tight race, and hence Carney's here on day 3 or 4 of the campaign, right? Yeah.
He started it off in Newfoundland, St. John's, and Gander. And it seems to me like the Liberals got into trouble under Trudeau's leadership in Atlantic Canada, and people hated the carbon tax, and the Trudeau brand was not good in Atlantic Canada for the past while, as we know. And it looks to me that, Carney is out there seeing if he can revive that. I don't think it's easy, to be honest. I think, the Conservatives have done a good job of picking some candidates who are very much entrenched in their communities and have been politically active. And, I'm thinking of Rob Batherson. I'm thinking of Alan McMaster. I mean, these are big names on ballots. And so I think it's not going to be a question of Carney just doing an easy sweep, but he's out there trying to see what he can get.
As far as Poilievre goes, I mean, continuing to rail against Carney as carbon tax Carney and sneaky and and all of that routine. I guess at this point, how do you pivot from that? And do you pivot from that?
I don't think he's going to pivot from trying to take Carney's stock down, because the election is going to be really about who do you want to be prime minister, who do you trust to handle this mess. And I think Poilievre has to go at the fact that Carney personally is showing up in a different way than Trudeau. It's not about the Liberals. It's about Carney. He's different. He's got a different kind of track record. And so how do you compete with that? How do you compete with this guy who was a Bank of Canada governor and the Bank of England governor, like in an economic crisis, right? So Poilievre is saying, you can't trust this guy. He's keeping secrets. He's not telling us what he owns. He's not disclosing his conflicts of interest, and he'll keep pushing at that to see whatever he can wring out of that. And I don't think it's going to be the best strategy, but we'll see. Well,
if it hasn't worked yet, is it going to start working magically? Like, what type of magic does he think is going to come out of that messaging?
Yeah, I mean, I think the carbon tax Carney thing, like, come on. I know those t-shirts are printed, but let's go. Let's go.
Yeah, he loves the alliteration, right? He gets a kick out of alliteration.
Yeah, I didn't realize in English class how important that would be in politics, but here we go.
That's right. Okay, Lori, great as always. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Todd.
All right, take care. Lori Turnbull, Dalhousie University political science professor. And we'll be talking with Steve Murphy, by the way. You know who Steve Murphy is, of course, from 10:30 to 11. And I'll get his take on all of this. And, of course, as mentioned, we'll open the phone lines between 11 and 12 to hear your say. Restaurants charging for no-shows. We'll discuss this when we come back. Right, this story, the Quebec government says that it will allow restaurants to charge people who reserve a table but who don't show up and don't cancel ahead of time, a change welcomed by an industry that says no shows cost the average eatery almost $50,000 a year. Joining us to discuss all of this is Max Waugh, VP Federal Restaurants Canada. Max, thanks for joining the show.
Thanks for having me.
That's a big number, $50,000. How do they come up with that number?
So there's been a lot of study and a lot of surveys done within our industry to figure out that number, and that is the average. It goes up to about $100,000 for some of our members in Quebec.
Wow. Okay. So where else besides Quebec is this implemented?
So Quebec was the last province to put in place any type of regulation to help no-shows. And so we're happy that Quebec is actually fighting against no-shows. It's a step in the right direction, but we're a bit concerned in terms of they're giving us the tool, but they're telling us how to use the tool as well, right? So that is a bit of our concern, and we hope we can manage, have discussions with government to fix that a little bit.
All right, here in the Maritimes, is this applicable?
So the different rules that are applicable. The difference is that in Quebec, what they decided to do is say, well, you can fight, you can put you can impose a fine if people don't show up. It's $10 maximum, and this only applies if it's a reservation of 5 people or more. So we kind of have a concern with this because it goes farther than what you see elsewhere, where you have the tools to do it, but you can decide how much you're going to be charging people and for how many people. So that is a bit of concern. So in the Maritimes, you do have regulations in place. They differ from one place to another, but there is at least latitude for restaurant operators to decide what is the amount and when do they charge it.
Do restaurants need to disclose this?
It's usually written in whenever you make a reservation, they're supposed to disclose it, that there's a late fee if you don't cancel whatsoever. Yes. All
right. So obviously the only way to enforce it would be with a credit card. So when people make a reservation, asking for credit card information, I don't think I can't recall. Well, I don't make a lot of reservations to restaurants, but I can't recall anybody asking me for a credit card. Is that how it would work?
What we see in the market right now is a lot of people are moving towards making reservations online. So that's when they would ask for your credit card at that point. So that is where you see the shift. You're right that when you call a restaurant to order and to make a reservation, most of the time they don't ask you for one. So perhaps because they if you call, they feel like you're going to be showing up. So that might change in the future. But for now, you're right that most restaurants don't ask for a credit card number when you reserve by phone.
All right. Are you anticipating any pushback at all on this? I imagine probably some, but what are your thoughts on pushback from people?
Well, from the people, I think they understand that that can be costly, and the way it's been drafted in Quebec, the good thing is that they did put in place some guardrails, so you cannot just impose that if people cancel. I believe it's 48 hours in advance or even 24 hours. So there are some good guardrails. I don't think there's going to be a lot of pushback. I think there's going to be some discussions in terms of how can you balance between making sure that the customer, they don't get charged for nothing, and that restaurant operators can put in place a deterrent so that people don't reserve and not show up.
All right. So if people do make a reservation and they can't show up, is there a lead time? Is there a grace period in which they can call and cancel? I would assume there must be. What's the grace period?
There is one. It's 24 hours in advance. You don't get to pay that fee, which makes sense because at that point the restaurant can find other people or can reopen their reservation for someone else. So yes, there is some protection for the consumer in there.
Okay, so I guess when people call, they and they're making a reservation or they're doing it online, they can ask whether or not there's a cancellation fee, because I would assume that it's up to the restaurant. Each vendor would be different. What are your thoughts?
That is correct. So the maximum is set at 10, but people could decide to put a lower fee than this. They should be asking yes in Quebec just to make sure. Again, as you said, over the phone, it's still people don't really ask credit card numbers, but online there should be a policy where it's really written what is the timeline you have to make a cancellation if needed.
Okay, and the bottom line is that nobody wants to see restaurants and business owners lose money, right? I mean, it's a courtesy thing here, right? It's pretty simple.
Yeah, we don't want to lose money. At the same time, we want to make sure that it's the best experience for customers as well. So when you actually don't show up and there's a frustration because other people wanted to come and eat at the restaurant, we're just trying to balance making sure that consumers are happy and that restaurants don't lose that much money, because it's in terms of industry, it represents sometimes up to 30% no shows during the weekend. So it's quite massive.
Wow.
So we're trying to find ways to deter people from actually not showing up.
Okay, Max, appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
All right, take care. Max Schwab, VP Federal Restaurants Canada. This email from Lee says, would it have been nice to get Lori Turnbull's input on Carney running away from the TVA or TVA French debate? I think that was the biggest political news yesterday. I don't think people really cared, Lee, to be honest with you. I don't think people really care at all that he's not doing this French debate. He's doing the English and French debate, and then this TVA one was an invitation, and I think it was a $30,000 entry fee or something like that in order to cover the expenses. But Mark Carney, look, he's not. I wouldn't say he's not fluent. It's certainly he's not as comfortable in French as he is in English. But I just don't think that people really care for the most part whether he's doing a French debate or not, an extra debate. In Quebec, I'm sure they do, and I'm sure it was a calculated move, like all politics is always calculated. But the biggest political news story yesterday, I think that might be a bit of an exaggeration. This story here kind of makes me shake my head, actually, on the CBC website just now. Liberal MP and former Cabinet Minister Sean Fraser is cancelling his plans to retire from politics and will announce today he will seek re-election in his Nova Scotia riding of Central Nova. Multiple sources say Fraser made the decision Monday after a phone call from Liberal leader Mark Carney asking him to reconsider. So isn't it amazing how things change, right? The winds of change and opportunism, that is politics 101. Mark Carney, or rather Sean Fraser, he was all done. He had his plans and sinking poles and Justin Trudeau and all that went with that, but now things have changed, and suddenly he's reevaluating his future. You got to remember, folks, that of course Sean Fraser was the immigration minister and housing minister under pretty failed policies. But again, for whatever reason, people are ready to forgive and forget all things, and it looks to me like Justin Trudeau truly was the fall guy for all of this. Fortuitous for Mark Carney and the Liberals, that's for sure. But anyway, Sean Fraser, and there'll probably be others that said they weren't running that will reemerge. We'll talk to Steve Murphy about all this when we come back. All right, just when things can't get any crazier, we look for a voice of reason, folks. That's what we do here at the Todd Veinotte Show, and the voice of reason just happens to be Steve Murphy. Why not, Steve? How does that feel to be the voice of reason?
I'm not sure if that's a compliment or a curse.
It's a heavy responsibility, my friend. It's a heavy responsibility you bear.
Well, the title of my book is Murphy's Logic, but I always say when I'm speaking to audiences, it's only logic if you agree with it. If you don't, it's something else. But reason, I'm flattered, Todd. Thank you.
All right, so my, it looks like an epiphany has been had here in Nova Scotia by Sean Fraser. He woke up this morning and said, "You know what? I don't think I think I might run again." Isn't that amazing how things change, in politics?
I can't understand what might have changed. I mean, only 3 months ago, and I have great respect for Mr. Fraser and his abilities. Let me say that. I do think that he is a very, very bright man. Mm-hmm. I think he has had a couple of tough portfolios. I think he's a rising star in the Liberal Party. 3 months ago, though, it appeared that he might not get reelected because that part of Nova Scotia was leaning Tory. Mm. And in fact, 3 months ago, the polls suggested that Nova Scotia might elect a number of Conservatives. The polls have totally changed. The prospects for re-election have changed. So some will see this as cynical and opportunistic. Others will see it as simply making a career decision based on the changing circumstances.
How do you see it?
Well, again, when you argue as Mr. Fraser did 3 months ago, and even as recently as a week ago, I believe in a speech to the Chamber of Commerce down in Antigonish that he had other things he wanted to focus on, it's easy to see this as opportunistic, but I will accept Mr. Fraser at his word and Mr. Carney at his word that they had a meaningful conversation yesterday, and Mr. Carney assured Mr. Fraser that perhaps they can find a better way to balance work and home life. I'm inclined to want to believe people, Todd, because I would like to think that people don't tell bald-faced lies, but the problem is this does appear opportunistic. Yeah, I will let the public, the voters in Mr. Fraser's riding, make the decision as to whether it is rank opportunism or simply a well-balanced and well-considered reconsideration based on the circumstances that have changed dramatically. There's no question that 3 months ago, this looked like an uphill battle for all of the Liberal incumbents in the province and in the country, really. And now the polls suggest that's changed.
Right. What are those who are staunch defenders of democracy and grassroots democracy and say, what's this mean? What does this say for anybody who wins a nomination and is a candidate and can simply be kicked to the curb because of the whim of an outgoing MP? What's that say? Does that matter? Is that being overly dramatic, or is that just politics?
Well, I mean, it will reinforce the view that many people already have that politicians often act in their self-interest. I would also add, though, Todd, that most of us act in self-interest when we have to, or when we have the opportunity to do so. The difference is when you're in public life, your actions are subject to a great deal of debate on programs like this in the public square. And when you offer yourself for election to a council or a legislature or a parliament, every action you take is going to be weighed and considered by the voters. No secret, Todd, that there is a great deal of cynicism about politicians and the political process. All of that said, given the circumstances in this country today and what we're facing in our dealings with the United States of America, based on all of the politics of the hour, I think perhaps people are asking themselves who are the best people to do the job. Maybe some of the cynicism will be forgiven or overlooked. Although I suspect that people who don't like politicians because they believe they're all in it for themselves won't like them anymore after decisions and situations like this.
Yeah, to me, it really smacks just how unpopular Justin Trudeau was. I mean, this guy might be the most unpopular outgoing prime minister in my lifetime, short maybe Brian Mulroney. But, I mean, he's apparently, it looks like he's the fall guy here, right?
Well, I don't know if he's a fall guy, and I would agree with you, by the way, that after 8 or 10 years, almost all prime ministers tend to be pretty unpopular. I think Jean Chrétien might have been a bit of an exception. He's remained a pretty popular figure, but you're right. The first Prime Minister Trudeau was unpopular. Mulroney was unpopular. For that matter, Stephen Harper was unpopular. Remember in 2015, the issue in the election campaign really was Stephen Harper and whether to re-elect him. By the way, at this stage in the 2015 campaign, 34 days before the election, Stephen Harper and Tom Mulcair were battling it out to see who'd be prime minister. Wow. Justin Trudeau and the Liberals were running third in most of the polling around that time, and we know how that election turned out. So, yes, I agree with you that Mr. Trudeau really had become the issue. Mm-hmm. Mr. Trudeau had also become the brand. Don't forget the Liberal Party under Justin Trudeau became a much different, a much more, they would describe themselves as progressive. Their critics would say they were leftists. Choose whichever word you want. Mr. Trudeau had moved the party away from the center. Mr. Carney is now attempting to move the party back into the center. With that rhetoric I've just heard this morning on Blake's newscast about his defense commitments, for example. We haven't had a Liberal prime minister commit to defense spending on that level in a great many years. I think Stephen Harper was quite committed to defense, obviously with the frigate contract that was won by Halifax and so on. But we haven't heard that kind of language, that kind of tone or policy from the Liberals in all the years they've been in office.
But how much can you take that to the bank? I mean, obviously, anybody can promise anything, including giving away the Confederation Bridge, for goodness sakes, at this point. So what can you count on? And again, I know I sound cynical as hell here, Steve. For that, I apologize, but I am cynical. What are your thoughts?
Well, promises are cheaply made, and they're very expensive to keep.
Yeah.
Although I think certain promises being made now by both Mr. Carney, Mr. Poilievre, Mr. Singh, and the others, some of these promises are more likely to be kept given the present circumstances. And I'll give you an example of this. When I hear Mr. Carney say this morning that he's going to rapidly accelerate defense spending in the country, it seems to me that is something for which there's a good deal of support in the country at the moment, given what's going on in our relationship with the United States and our reawakened belief that we have to do more to defend ourselves. So it seems to me that a commitment like that being made by Mr. Carney or Mr. Poilievre or anyone else is quite likely to be a commitment kept, because I think that's what the people actually want them to do.
When it comes to defense spending, I mean, you can spend all the money you want. It's like healthcare. Just because you're spending money doesn't mean that things are going to improve, and it doesn't mean that it's not going to be just wasted money. So, again, with the frigate program, I mean, I can remember hosting a show way back with Tom Young, producing Tom Show, and they were talking about the frigates and the Darrell Dexter days. I mean, billions and billions and billions and billions. How much money can we sink into this thing?
Well, we're going to have to sink a great deal of money into this thing because, and we're calling it the frigate program, I guess it's more accurately the shipbuilding program, but call it what you will. It's going to cost a great deal of money to build those ships. We knew that when the contracts were let back, 15 years ago now, I think. And it's only gotten more and more expensive. But I guess what's really different now, Todd, is I perceive in the public and in the country that there is an understanding or at least more support for the idea of doing more to defend ourselves, given that our ally, our NATO ally, our neighbor has proven to be less reliable than we always assumed. And that allowed us, I think it would be fair to say, to become quite lazy in our self-defense. It also allowed us to rely on them too heavily for trade, although it goes without saying that they're always going to be our trading partner because they are our next-door neighbor. But the point is, we became maybe too comfortable in our assumptions about the United States. So I think as it pertains to defense at the moment, a lot of Canadians believe now is the time to fulfill or exceed our NATO commitment because our Western European allies also expect us to do that. Okay.
When it comes to the polls, look, I get emails all the time, people saying they don't believe the polls. They just simply think that they couldn't, this turnaround could not happen with this speed, this rapid of a turnaround. What are your thoughts on pollsters?
Well, I've always believed in properly conducted and well-reported polling. I'm not going to suggest to you that all polls are well-conducted or properly reported, but I think when the pollsters do their job and when journalism does its job, that polls become a good indicator of where public opinion really is. Any poll taken into and of itself is subject to being wrong. And even the pollsters will tell you that I think, 5% of polls are going to be outside their own margin of error because that's just the nature of polling. But when you see the same finding in poll after poll after poll from reputable pollsters in properly reported news stories, then the trend, I think, becomes unmistakable. Whether you wish to believe the numbers, that's up to you. My suggestion is on election night or, when the official tallies are done, compare the most recent polls with the actual result and see how close the pollsters came. But I do worry about one thing, Todd, in this country, and that is the numbers that always appear or usually appear at the top of news stories are about the national horse race.
Right. Yeah.
And at the moment, the polling consensus is that it's close, that maybe the Liberals have a slight lead now in national public opinion. Mm-hmm. But with all due respect, national public opinion doesn't really tell you very much, because in the last two federal elections in this country, the national vote was won by the party that was the official opposition. The Conservative Party got more votes nationally in the last two elections than the Liberal Party. Our system doesn't produce governments based on popular vote on a national basis. So what we really need to do, I think, as people in the news media and as voters, is look at the scientific polling properly reported and then look at how it pertains to local and provincial and regional races and ask, how do these numbers likely translate into seats? If it's true, and I underscore if it's true, that at the moment the Liberal Party is leading the Conservative Party in the national vote, that tends to suggest that the Liberal Party, if the election were today, would get a probably majority government. But this is the third day of a 37-day exercise.
Right.
And as I said to you a minute ago, at this point in the campaign in 2015, Justin Trudeau was running third.
Yeah, I can't remember who it was, but a prominent editor of a newspaper who's no longer in the business chided journalists and the media for making polls front page stories and suggested that back in the day, to use that term, polls were fourth or fifth story, and now they lead the newscast, and perhaps they shouldn't. What are your thoughts on that?
I think the fair-minded can debate that. Look, in my own career, when I was on ATV and then CTV, we commissioned and reported polls for a number of years, working with OmniFacts, which was our pollster and very reputable, I might add. We conducted the first ever exit polling in the New Brunswick election in 1987, and predicted that Frank McKenna would win virtually every seat. Polls properly conducted and well reported can be very useful. Now, it's true that given the proliferation of pollsters in the country today, I mean, we used to have Gallup and Angus Reid, and there are two or three national pollsters. Now there are many. So sure, the reporting of polls has become a lot more common and a lot more prominent because news organizations actually commission them and then report on them as original news stories. Again, I'm perfectly prepared to entertain the idea that maybe they get too much front page coverage or lead too many newscasts or dominate too many websites. What have you? Sure, we can debate that. Our polls news, I think the proper reporting and interpretation of polling is newsworthy, and let the consumer, the listener, reader, and viewer decide how much weight they want to give it.
Interesting. Okay, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back with Steve Murphy. Taking your calls, the way to reach us is 902-405-6000. What would you like to get into today? Again, 902-405-6000. The federal Liberals pushing further ahead of the Conservatives in voter support. Almost 1 in 2 Canadians surveyed said they think the Liberals will win the next election. A new poll suggests. A survey conducted by Leger for the Canadian Press reports that 44% of decided voters surveyed would vote Liberal in the upcoming election ahead of the Conservatives at 38%. What are your thoughts on polls? First of all, we talked a lot about polls with Steve Murphy. Now, just about every poll, if not every poll that I see, indicates that the pretty much the same thing with a little variance depending on what you look at. But the Liberals have the 20-plus point lead the Conservatives enjoyed for months and months and months is more than evaporated. As a matter of fact, the Liberals are now out in front and quite handily, depending on what you look at. So what is going on here? And look, some of you don't believe polls. Some of you feel as though the fix is in. I don't. I'm willing to entertain that, I suppose. But to me, if they're all saying the same thing or relatively the same thing, there's something to it. So what are your thoughts on what's happening here and what is going on with people willing to forgive the Liberals, which was a pretty abysmal record? at the end. When you think about affordability, dismal record on affordability. Home now look, some of you out there listening right now will say, well, sure, this happened in Western democracies, countless Western democracies after the pandemic. Granted, that's true, but still, the government still owns this record of bad affordability, homelessness, inflation, the carbon tax is immensely unpopular, runaway debt, a bloated public sector, scandal after scandal after scandal with this government, including, of course, it's all started way back with the Aga Khan trip, Jody Wilson-Raybould. I could go on and on. But was Trudeau really the fall guy for a pretty failed government? And why does Carney make everything all right with the Liberals? To the point where people are coming back out of the woodwork who wanted to spend time with their family, but now they're running again, including Sean Fraser. The CBC reporting this morning that the Liberal MP and former Cabinet Minister Sean Fraser canceling his plans to retire from politics and will announce that he's seeking re-election. So there you go, folks. What is going on here? And what is the ballot box question? In my opinion, it still remains and has to be what and how do you handle Donald Trump and tariffs? Because that will have a massive impact on this country, a massive impact on our region as well, not just the country, but our region. And you want to talk about affordability challenges and housing challenges and all of these issues, well, they're going to be exacerbated big time if, in fact, this full scale and suite of tariffs get rolled out in fullness. You ain't seen nothing yet. So, what are your thoughts on all of this? 902-405-6000, or you can get into whatever else you'd like. It's an open hour, of course. 902-405-6000. Let's kick it off with Keith. Hello, Keith.
Good morning, Todd. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I just want to make a comment on the change in polls in the last 2 weeks that we've seen. If we go back 4 or 5 months ago, a lot of people said to me that, the Aliyev guy, but I can't vote for Justin Trudeau. And I think that was not a vote for the progressive conservatives, but a vote against the Liberals, which, like when governments stay around too long, politicians are like fish. They stay too long, they start to smell. And I think that it was not a relative interest in voting conservative, but certainly an interest in getting rid of Justin Trudeau.
Is that fair though, Keith? In your opinion, does Justin Trudeau really was he responsible for all things that were wrong with the Liberal Party? Because there's a lot of people making a lot of decisions that went into government policy.
Well, but I think he stayed around too long. He should have stepped down 6 months, 8 months ago.
Yeah. And
I think the longer he stayed, the more unpopular he became. And the sacrificial lamb really came when Kristen Freeland came out with her resignation. A lot of people said, that's exactly how I feel, is the way Kristen Freeland feels about Justin Trudeau. I don't think there's a problem with the Liberal Party. I think that there was a problem with the Liberal leader. And now that we have a new leader, I think a lot of people are coming back and saying, well, I really didn't want to vote conservative. I just could not bring myself to vote for Justin Trudeau's party. Anyway, that's all.
Okay, Keith. Appreciate your opinion. Thanks for the call. All right, today 902-405-6000. That's interesting. Again, how quickly people are ready to forgive this Liberal Party just because Justin Trudeau is gone. It's quite amazing, in my opinion. 902-405-6000. Tony, hello.
Good morning, Todd. Todd, first of all, Steve Murphy for Prime Minister. And now I'll move on to what I really wanted to talk about was I mean that, by the way. He's got my vote.
He's already a member of the Order of Canada. That's pretty good.
Yeah, no doubt. He can put that on his resume for Prime Minister.
and put right on the card, backed by Tony. What do you think?
No, that would be a definite negative. No. You're trying to get me in the crap here. Stop that. You're baiting me into
No,
trouble.
listen, you do that. You do a good job doing that all on your own, my friend.
I know that. What do I got to lose? I'm almost 80 years old. What do I got to lose, Todd?
There you go.
Hey, listen, the defense appropriations that the current prime minister and prospective prime minister put out this morning, you can't afford to do anything else. 8 frigates, was it? No, 15 frigates, 8 icebreakers, numerous F-35s, and submarines. Put all of those together, and Canada can't afford to buy anything. You can't fix your housing. You can't fix your food. And the most important thing is, how would you man these submarines and airplanes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Manning and training are two of the highest cost items on a defense budget. I know, I was there. I worked in it. So the bottom line here is that he's going to build defense. He's not going to build defense at that rate. You're going to lay 3 keels here for supposed destroyers at $8 billion. You don't have the first suite. You don't have the first crew to man it. You don't even know how you're going to finish them. That was just out of this world. If anybody believes that crap, bring Scott Taylor and I think it's Commander Hansen. Is that his name?
Yeah.
Bring them on and see what they tell you about that mess that he wants to build all at one time.
Yeah.
It's not. It can't be done. Can't be done.
No, I agree with you. Actually, Tony, we agree 100%.
Oh, well, that's a good thing, isn't it? We started off the day on a laugh and a good note. Listen, right. You have a great day.
Okay, pal. Take care. Yeah, great point. 902-405-6000. Give us a call. What's on your mind? You got open lines for you. Again, 902-405-6000. Hi, Len.
Yeah, good morning, Todd. My opinion about voting is that I like the people that campaign and tell me what they're going to do to help me and help the economy. I don't want to hear these people getting on and they're campaigning, running down the opposition that's up against them. I don't want to hear that. We already know all the things that were done wrong by the Liberals, by the Liberal Party. But tell me what you're going to do to help me, not against the other person. The other thing is, I'd like to say that I don't believe in polls. For example, how does the poll from last week put the Liberals and the Conservatives dead even, and then all of a sudden today they got the Liberals up to 44%? Well, to me, Todd, isn't it possible that these people that are giving you the journalists the information, maybe Liberals themselves that are popping it up so that they can get be in the front? I don't believe that, but I just want to say that I'm going to vote for the party. And I'm going to say I'm going to vote for Conservatives, really, because the Liberals have been in power for 10 years, and they didn't do a great job. And I'd like to give somebody else a chance, because the persons that are in there too long, they get away with murder. They can do whatever they want, just like Trudeau did after the many years. He became like a dictator, not doing what the people wanted, but what he wanted to do. And now the Liberals have jumped on the party of the Conservatives, which wanted to get rid of the carbon tax, and all of a sudden the Liberals want to get rid of the carbon tax, only to boost up their campaign. And I don't go for that. So my vote is for the Conservatives, and thank you very much.
Okay, thanks for the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. Give us a buzz, folks. Again, we've got open lines for you. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, continuing our chat with Steve Murphy, CTV special correspondent, analyst, commentator, friend of the show, and voice of reason. Steve Murphy, this that tagline's
I'm not putting that on the business card. No, that is definitely a matter of opinion, not a matter of fact.
All right, here's a quick email from Scott, and I thought I'd ask you about it. It says, why is no light being shone on the fact that Carney has apparently avoided contacting Donald Trump once he became prime minister, off to Europe on the company jet, come back and still made no effort? That's from Scott. What's your response to that?
A couple of things. I think, first of all, Mark Carney was trying to assert that he has established relationships with the Europeans. We know what the relationship between Canada and the United States has been since Mr. Trump's return to the Oval Office. So I think Mr. Carney was trying to make a statement that there is a world for Canada beyond the United States. He does have personal relationships with the European leaders, given his experience at the Bank of England. So I think he was trying to make a statement. Well, it might have been a bit of a backhander at the Americans as well, because history has suggested that the Canadian Prime Minister usually first visits Washington, D.C. I'm not sure that Mr. Carney was invited to visit with Mr. Trump.
Yeah.
The second thing is, I'm reading in the American media this morning that Mr. Trump has apparently indicated that he doesn't wish to meet with the Canadian Prime Minister until the election determines who that's going to be. Mm-hmm. So again, I was reading that just before I came on with you here this morning, Todd. So, again, yes, there's politics in it, there's messaging in it. Would it be appropriate for Mr. Carney to immediately go to the United States and seek an audience with Donald Trump? I don't know. Prime Minister Trudeau and Dominic LeBlanc and others went immediately to Mar-a-Lago to try to court Mr. Trump, and look how that turned out.
Right.
So.
Yeah, well said. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says Danielle Smith is free to express her opinions on U.S.-Canada trade war after the Alberta Premier is accused of soliciting Donald Trump's intervention in the federal election. What are your thoughts on Danielle Smith? It's pretty hard to walk back her own words on Breitbart. I mean, they're there for all to hear. It seems to me that those who are upset have a point here. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think those who are upset have a point. I also think that, to address the first question, yes, it's a free country. Premier Smith can say whatever she wants. Second of all, I think it's true that her comments have not been helpful. They haven't been helpful in any way, because it would be better if we kept this kind of discussion within the Canadian family. But third, and this may surprise you and feel free to disagree, the only trouble is there's a lot of truth in what she said. And that is that it probably would be helpful to Pierre Poilievre if Mr. Trump and the American administration would back off all of this tariff talk and all of the bully talk about annexing Canada and so on. There is some essential truth in what she said. The question is, should she be saying it? And again, I don't think it's helpful to say it. I wish that people would keep their nose out of our business, and we should keep our nose out of theirs when it comes to domestic politics. But I think she can't walk it back. We know what she said. It was said in a public square. It wasn't said to be secret. It's also interesting that she apparently still has direct channels into the U.S. administration, and that shouldn't surprise anyone given the politics of Danielle Smith.
Okay, but look, the time is now to really, if you're going to empower the argument for natural resources and infrastructure, which is needed to get it to markets, I think the opportunity is now, if not now, never. And certainly Tim Houston is trying to capitalize on that here in Nova Scotia. What are your thoughts on the public temperature for natural resource development and extraction when, in fact, we've been going in the other direction for a very long time? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, it's a polarizing issue. I hear it here on your program. I hear from articulate voices on both sides of the argument. I would like to come down somewhere in the middle, and not because I'm not willing to take a position, but because my position is this. We should look at what we can do in a reasonable fashion and ask ourselves, are we willing and able, or do we need to pay the price associated with resource extraction or resource development? When you make a decision 20 years ago, does a decision from 20 years ago still hold up 20 years later? It's fair to ask that question. I do understand, of course, those who fear the cost of the environment and so on. We paid a high price for resource development historically, coal mines, and we had the Sydney tar ponds. And I mean, let's face it, we've had a long history.
Sure, Boat Harbor.
Paying the price. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, again, I don't think any of us wants to intentionally walk down one of those very polluted roads or waterways again. But by the same token, technology changes, and we should ask ourselves fairly, what can we do at what cost moving forward? So I have no problem with asking the questions. I would not approach it with a sort of predetermined outcome. I have a sense that the Premier wants to consider these things because he really wants to do them. That's his right. I would hope it's not a simple matter of trying to justify a decision he's already made, although that may prove to be the case.
One of the challenges, though, with all of this is who do you trust, right? Because obviously industry has got a vested interest, and their role, they're telling us all the reasons why it's been advanced, why technology's been advanced, and then conversely, you get those opposing it. No matter what, they're going to oppose. No matter. So we, as the electorate, and the public, get stuck in the middle trying to determine what's good information and what's not. That's the challenge, is it not?
Is that not the challenge in every aspect of our life?
Sure.
The proliferation of information through social media and elsewhere? Sure, I think you've nailed it. As I said earlier, Todd, we're all self-interested. I don't know too many people who like to do things that are going to intentionally and deliberately hurt their own situation.
Yeah.
So sure, industry is self-interested. Politicians are self-interested. This is all true. As to who do you trust? Well, find sources that prove reliable and trust those sources. That's the only advice I really can offer. It's what I try to do in my own life. What I tried to do pretty much when I worked in daily news as well. I will say that there is a new effort underway nationally. It involves some very good people in the country called Get Fact, which is a fact-checking site that is being launched. And I understand there's going to be a daily newsletter. As I say, some very reputable people, including Kevin Newman, are involved in this. And they describe it as a collective fight against falsehoods and exposing threats. We are, they say, nonpartisan. Our only commitment is to Canada. Truth matters. Join us. It's called Get Fact. You can find it by using a Google or other search.
Okay. In closing, an email from Mark says, thanks for having Steve on your show. He's very balanced and reasonable. So there you go.
Well, there's two votes for the side of reason. Mark, thank you. I appreciate it. But let me just say this quickly, Todd, not to dominate too much of your time. One of the reasons I like coming on your program is because it is the supermarket of ideas. And I'm prepared to listen to arguments on any side of any argument if they're based on facts. If they're based on facts. And the only thing I worry about on your program and in all media platforms is that there's a lot of bad information masquerading as fact. Let's base our opinions on facts. It is not that important whether you and I or any two people agree. And two people can look at a set of facts and come to some different conclusions. That's okay. And that's why programs like this are important. And that's why I'm happy to get in here every so often just to throw out a few items.
All right, Steve. Love it. Thanks, my friend.
Todd, thank you. Thanks, Vanessa.
Okay. There you go. Thanks, Vanessa. Take care. Steve Murphy, CTV special correspondent, analyst, and commentator, former anchor, of course, friend of the show, and I stand by the voice of reason. Now we've got some time for you. What is on your mind today? Give us a call at 902-405-6000. What are your thoughts on all of this, folks? Lots to talk about. Again, 902-405-6000. Your calls when we come back. All right, continuing with your calls. The way to reach us is 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Let's get into this. Bill, hello.
Hi there, Todd.
Hi, Bill.
How you doing?
I'm well, you?
Not too bad.
Good.
I think it was Tony was on there earlier there about building the ships and so on, wasn't it, Tony?
Yeah, it was Tony.
Yeah, he's right on. I mean, I can't believe that the government's going in and going to blow a whole pile of money on destroyers and ships that can't even man, and they're obsolete to begin with. All they got to do is check over there in Ukraine and Russia how they can shoot these things down, sink them like nothing. The Arctic stuff and the submarines maybe, but we can't defend ourselves, so we'll get to just waste piles of money, put it on the people's household and the whatever. But anyway, that wasn't what I called. I wanted to try to bring things back to Nova Scotia, a little bit more talk. And the area I want to talk about is the Point Pleasant Park. Now, there's a Point Pleasant Park commission down there that's I'm not too happy with at all. Of course, I had nothing to do with putting them in there, but I can't believe that they've let Point Pleasant Park go down to the stage where it is right now. To start with, in fact, I've been after a friend of mine to try to put a bid in for that canteen down there to get some half-decent food back into the place. Anyway, here's the thing you got there. First of all, I don't think that the buses, when they come to the Golden Gates, I don't think they go down to the Point Pleasant Park beaches and stuff. That's to start with. So they're up there, stuck up there for some reason. Anyway, when you look at Point Pleasant Park, one time we used to have a half-decent beach. They're not putting the sand back. They're not fixing the walls down there where you park your cars. They're starting to deteriorate. The benches and the tables are just not getting looked after and painted, fixed up, and so on. The canteen is tied up there with this group there for practically nothing, I think, and then about 50 car spaces. And then the payoff is Fripp's old building there, a nice old building, and he used to be the superintendent. Last time I heard that Sable Allen has got that place taken over. I don't know what the heck Sable Allen's doing down in Point Pleasant Park. But we need some change here. We need this group that's looking after this place to come alive and see what's going on here, because it's just deteriorated it. And then on top of all that, Halifax City won't sign the lease, 1-year lease for, I think, the shilling. That hasn't happened in 7 years now. Actually, that property there is apparently British Crown. Mm-hmm. And we can't come up with a shilling to look after it. There's something wrong. What do you think is going on there?
Well, I don't really I'm not passionate about Point Pleasant Park, to be honest with you. I haven't even been in Point Pleasant Park. It's been a couple of years since I've been down there, which is odd because it is a gem for sure. I can't really offer anything, Bill, other than yeah, I think it should be treated like the gem that it is. And if it's not upkept and it's not maintained properly, then it should be. And I can't disagree with that, Bill.
Well, I'll tell you, if there's anybody in the restaurant business, I wish they'd come alive now. I've been after one fellow I know was perfect for there, but they should look at that. There's a reasonable rent. Yeah. I don't think.
Why don't you start a business there, Bill? You're an entrepreneur. You started a restaurant there. It could be called Bill's Place. What do you think?
Listen, Todd, I've got so much on my plate right now at my age, and I'm down. It's a downturn. This is the year I started going down. So,
you're not going down, Bill. I know you. You're feisty. You're not going anywhere.
Well, the voice is okay, and the still idea is okay, and dancing's okay, but other than that,
that's three that I don't have right there. So you're ahead of me, pal. Thanks, Bill.
Good man. Appreciate it.
Okay,
Thanks.
Take care, bud. 902-405-6000. That's a Halifax legend. I don't care what anybody says. Love him or whatever. He's a legend. Jason's a first-time caller. Hello, Jason.
Hello, Todd. It's nice to speak with you.
Great. Thanks for calling.
I'm a big fan of the show, and I just wanted to talk about the upcoming election.
Great. Thank you. Please do so.
I was one of the first people that couldn't wait to see the backside of Justin Trudeau. And I can't believe what I'm going to say to you right now, but I'm planning on voting Liberal, and I'll tell you why if you want to hear it.
I do want to hear it. Absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay. For me, it comes down to respect. Mark Carney shows respect to everybody that I've seen, whether he agrees with you or he disagrees with you. Mm-hmm. He shows you respect.
Yeah.
And respect garners respect. And on the world stage, if you show respect to people, they show it in return, and respect, to me, equals prosperity, and prosperity for our country.
What about ideas, though, and ideology and all that stuff, Jason? That's important, too, I'm sure, right?
It is important, but I guess I'm not the type of person that gets too caught up in ideologies of political parties.
Yeah. Well, look, he's definitely the exact polar opposite. Steve Murphy said it, and he was exactly right. He is the polar opposite of Justin Trudeau in every way, isn't he, really, though?
He truly is. He is. And, that's where I sit right now. So.
Okay, thanks for the call, Jason. Call again, my friend.
You're welcome.
Okay, all right, take care. 902-405-6000. Kevin, hello.
Hi, Todd. How are you?
I'm well, you?
Good, thanks. I just like to share a little information. A group of friends and myself went down to the States on a cruise out of Tampa. And while we were on board ship, because we were really apprehensive due to the political climate, and people came up to us once they knew we were Canadians, and they apologized for the president. And they felt terrible, and, we're sorry what he's doing to Canada. And it felt so great to hear that from a regular person. So they're not happy.
Yeah, you're right. But Kevin, depending on where you travel in the United States, you might not get as warm a reception. And
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were in Florida, and we were really nervous, actually.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, people everywhere came out of the woodwork, and even came from different parts of when we sit down to eat. They would come up from their tables and come over and apologize.
Interesting. And Florida, of course, is a Republican state, big time. So that's interesting.
It is. Well, so one guy explained to me, the North is blue and the South is red.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it was just refreshing to hear that.
Interesting.
They're seeing it too.
Interesting. Okay, Kevin, thanks for the call.
Okay, Todd.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. By way of disclosure, I guess I could disclose this. I'm going to be off for the next 2 weeks. And one of the things that I'm going to be doing in the first week is, first of all, marrying my amazing fiancée, Kelly, who I can't wait to marry. She's an incredible woman. Anyway, I won't go on with that. But we've made plans a number of months ago to get married in Las Vegas at the Flamingo, because I love Las Vegas. I love that area. I love that region. She's never been there. So she and I and family, it's just a small event, are going to Las Vegas. Now, we strongly considered canceling our trip to Las Vegas, folks. Like, we really did. But in the end, we decided to go. And the second week, we're coming back to Nova Scotia to spend time here and to kind of bomb around Nova Scotia and do a staycation. We were going to do the second week in California and Arizona and some other places out in that area, but we canceled the second week because of what's going on in the United States. But I'm going to be honest with you. I have a little bit of concern how it will be received, but I certainly hope that it's the same as the previous caller. And my anticipation is that we'll be fine. But we really strongly considered canceling the trip. But in the end, we thought, no, we made the trip. We made the plans. Let's do this. And besides, if I give her a chance to get away from me, not marrying me once, then you don't take that chance with a woman like Kelly. You marry her when you lock it down. Anyway, so yeah, I'll be away the next couple of weeks, and we're going to be in the United States in Las Vegas. So I'll have some stories perhaps when I return. But I'm anticipating that we'll be treated well. I really am. What are your thoughts? What's on your mind? 902-405-6000. Give us a call. Want to hear from you again. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back.
Thanks.
All right, continuing with your calls. The way to reach us is 902-405-6000. Give us a buzz again, 902-405-6000. Let's talk to George. Hello, George.
Morning, buddy. How you doing?
I'm well, you?
Not bad.
Great.
Can you hear me good?
I get you well, yeah.
Thank you. Todd, I don't know if I heard this on your show the other day, but somebody said this analogy it's the same old band, they just changed the lead singer.
No, it wasn't. I'd take credit for it if I could, but it's a good one. Or maybe the same team, just a different coach.
Yeah, whatever. But
yeah.
It could have been your show or the Rob Snow show I was listening to the other day.
Right.
But anyway, it's the same, and I can't for the life of me get over like people. We were in such a hateful frame of mind with this federal government for years. I mean, everything went downhill with our housing and our immigration and all these kind of things. And then people think they're just going to turn around and change it all up.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to happen. And I certainly agree with Len. The liberals are stealing the progressive conservative ideas. I mean, especially that carbon tax business, right?
Yeah.
They if Justin Trudeau had been in there, do you think, he'd be axing the tax? I don't know. I don't think so. But anyway, that's all I got to say about that. I just don't know people's frame of mind, why all of a sudden they switched. Same band, different lead singer, and that's about it. Oh. And I think we're going to be in dire straits. Oh, And there's one thing I'd like to say to all the working people out there.
Yeah.
Like Donald Trump had a good saying, no tax on overtime. Now, wouldn't that be great for all the workers out there so you can work your overtime and not get 50% of it or more gone back to the federal government and provincial governments?
Well, I'm sure that at some point that'll probably get rolled out. I wouldn't doubt it one bit.
No, but that's a good idea because when I was working, I did work a bit of overtime, and I'm just saying it would be some nice to see no tax on overtime.
Yeah, indeed.
You don't have to work it, so they wouldn't get it anyway.
There you go. You know? Okay.
That's all I got to say, Todd.
Thanks, pal.
Thank you.
Thanks, George.
Okay,
take care.
buddy.
902-405-6000. Hello, Gary.
Sure. Good morning, Todd. First of all, I'd like to congratulate you on your upcoming marriage.
Thank you, sir.
And it's a wonderful life, I can tell you. Anyways, just talking about going to the States, making business to the States, you have to be cautious of where you go. And we had a personal experience with our granddaughter, went on a school trip to California. Was planned about a year or so ago. She's in high school. And on the way back, they wanted to go into the Marines Museum in San Diego, and were turned away because they were Canadian. So if they can do that to school children, I would be very cautious about going down to the States. And we also have acquaintances that live on the border town of near Michigan, and they're very cautious about going across to do shopping of any kind because cars are being keyed over there, and because they're Canadian. And so, in the climate that we're in now, I wouldn't be considering going to the States anytime soon. We used to go to Florida. I wouldn't go. Some people may have a great experience. Good luck to them. But and I think in a lot of cases, if depending on, especially red states, I would be very, very cautious. Anyway, that's just my little story for today, Todd.
Okay, all right, Gary.
We're in uncertain times, and it's unfortunate.
It sure is. Hard to believe we're even having these conversations, isn't it?
Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And I've been reading up on the economic policies of Trump. He doesn't even know high school economics by the sounds of it. And they talk about stagflation, which is worse than it's next to being a depression. So I don't know where he's coming from or where he's getting these ideas from. If he listens to anybody. But anyways, I just think as long as he thinks the way he does, we're not going to be out of the woods anytime soon.
Okay, thanks, Gary. Appreciate the call, pal.
Yeah.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. I'll just go back to the phones. I noticed that Pierre Paulé was making an announcement in Ontario today, pledging to axe GST on new homes under $1.3 million. And we were chatting about this earlier, Dan and I, and the devil's in the details, right? How do you... is it the contractor that doesn't have to pay the GST on building supplies? Or how does this work? And the devil, of course, is always in the details when it comes to this. I'm just skeptical when I see all this axing the GST on new homes or any of these types of promises, because how do you implement it? And how do we know that contractors, knowing that the GST is being axed, won't simply inflate the price? Sad to say, but it's, I think, a legitimate question. 902-405-6000. Chris, hello.
Good morning, Todd. Congratulations on your wedding next week.
Thank you, sir.
Do you need a ring bearer? Because I'm not doing anything next week.
No, I'll pass. I love you, but I'm going to say no.
Oh, God, you're a liar, Todd. Well, look, I'm not a religious guy, and I don't think you are either to any great degree.
No, I am not. I used to be very religious. I'm not anymore.
Really?
Yes.
You smartened up.
Well, I'm not. I don't want to besmirch religion today, but
no, me neither, really.
Yeah.
But I think with Carney being in town today, we saw a bit of a Jesus moment. I think he visited the tomb, found Sean Fraser had left, and now we have the resurrection.
Yeah.
What's all of these liberal people that were standing right behind and alongside of Trudeau for 10 years are now all of a sudden decide, oh, I think I'll run now, because they think they can win. They have their own self-interest. I'm not saying conservatives don't have that too, or NDP or anything.
Or all of us, like Steve Murphy said, and rightfully so, we all are self-interested to a point.
To a point, that's right. But to use the reason that, and I think I heard it with Sean Fraser, that in these troubled times he was needed, basically, in the essence or whatever. What happens to the candidate they already chose for that?
You know what happens to them? They get jettisoned as fast as they can kick them out the door.
Exactly. Yeah. They got a one-way ticket to the moon.
Yeah.
And that shows you what kind of people we're going to get in with all these guys still jumping on the bandwagon. It's not going to be like one of your previous callers, or a couple of them have said, if Carney is elected, and the polls certainly are leaning that way as it stands right now, but I'm not a firm believer in polls. I'm a little skeptical, but and I'm certainly hopeful that he doesn't get elected. But if he does, look at the people behind him. It's the same bunch that's been there. The policies are not going to change. And it's, as I said a few days ago, try and see Carney and the Liberals for who they really are, not who they're telling you they are. I disagree with a comment I think Steve made about Carney and being a polar opposite to Trudeau. I think he's trying to let on that he is, because he knows he can't. He's got to alienate himself from anything Trudeau. But hey, he was Trudeau's advisor. Trudeau was who he was to a great degree, in my opinion, by the advice and the type of person Mark Carney is.
Well, how much advice did Trudeau take, though, right? And he gained a relationship, and I think came by it honestly as somebody who didn't take a lot of advice.
Well, we see that he didn't take a lot of good public policy advice. But he did take advice from somebody, and Carney wouldn't have been there for 5 or 6 years advising him if there wasn't some kind of a mutual
that's true.
Arrangement there that was working.
Yeah, Mark Carney, if Trudeau just ignored everything he said, at some point Mark Carney would just say, what's the point of even talking to him?
Carney would have been gone within months.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good point. It's a good point.
On question period, not this past Sunday, but the Sunday before, Francois-Philippe Champagne was interviewed, and he was asked about how they plan to balance the budget. And I'm going to quote him here.
By itself. It'll balance itself, won't it?
Oh, no, it's even worse than that. It's even worse and less transparent than that.
Okay.
We're going to do things differently. We're going to say there's a difference between spending and investment. Smoke and mirrors. You're going to come up with a big deficit, but they're going to say it's not from spending, it's from the investment. So that's all going to pay off down the road. People, you can't listen to these guys. I mean, I know Jim wants everybody to go out and drink the Kool-Aid and all that sort of thing. And for those that like Kool-Aid, liberal Kool-Aid, that's fine. Go ahead and do it. But you're not going to end up... What is the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over, but expecting a different result?
Yeah, that's it.
And this would be the fourth time. It's not going to be a different result. We have, for example, in the last 10 years, we've had the worst economic growth record since the 1930s, for God's sake, here in Canada.
Yeah.
Come on, people, look at their record. Just because the guy that said you got a new singer or a new band leader or a new coach for the team is still there. There's not any new people to speak of. They're all the same bunch of clapping seals that were behind Trudeau, nodding their heads and agreeing with everything he said. What's going to change? And Carney is not telling me, at least, I'm not hearing any ideas other than regurgitated ideas that Pierre Poilievre has already put out or is putting out.
Okay.
I'm not hearing
Here's an email. Somebody who wanted me to read it to you. They sent this along. Glenn says, remind Chris that Lee Iacocca turned Chrysler around with the same folks behind him in the late 70s. Carney can do the same. The leader is key. What do you say to Glenn?
Good point, Glenn, but Lee Iacocca did not do it by himself. I remember that. And Lee Iacocca was a very competent person, I'm sure. But the same team it's different in business than it is in politics. In business, people are given the opportunity to actually do things on their own and excel and succeed on their own. In this federal government, they are going to be controlled by Carney. There's no question about that. They will not have license to go out and do the things that they think is best to do. It never happens in politics. And I'm not saying that the Conservatives are going to be better in that regard either, but the analogy between Lee Iacocca and Mark Carney, it just doesn't cut it as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and plus, they don't have a K car.
Oh my God! You remember wasn't that at one point?
That resurrected that. The Caravan resurrected Chrysler, actually.
Yeah, it did. But the K car at one point there was more of them on the road or more in sales than any other vehicle.
I remember the first K car sold for $10,000, and that was considered a deal back then. $10,000 you could be in a brand new K car.
Yeah, well, I remember going a lot farther back than that. And I remember my father buying a Chrysler Newport back in the late 80s.
Wow, that's a boat. That's a boat.
A big boat loaded to the hilt, $5,000. And we thought it was a pile of money.
Yeah, Chris, sometime, and I'm going to do this because favorite car show, old car show, I'm going to do that sometime because people love to talk nostalgia, love to talk old cars. We're going to do that again sometime soon. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Todd.
Okay, thanks. Take care. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, taking your calls, 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Let's talk to John. Hello, John, the friendly barber. How are you, John?
The friendly barber. There you go. I just wanted to chime in on a couple things there, Todd.
Sure.
You know when you get that feeling in your gut and just something's not right about something, like the polling data and everything. So I'm going to read a tweet, if it's okay, from Frank Graves from 2022. He's the head of ECO's polling, and I just wanted to read this out for everyone to hear it. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. A real conservative option is a healthy counterbalance in a healthy democracy. Pierre Poilievre is an acolyte of authoritarian populism. This is never healthy. You are on notice, and I'm going to make sure that you never get to lead my country, and I don't make idle threats. And that's the CEO of ECO's polling. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. Like maybe is there some biases or not? But the two polling guys I go through by the most, I would say, is Abacus and the Nick Nanos guy.
Yeah.
Because the Ontario elections, the past federal elections, everything, I find those two are always within 4 points of the margin.
Mm-hmm.
But Nick Nanos pointed something out yesterday that I never really thought about. In the 2021 election, the Liberals had the more seat vote in Ontario, but not the popular vote. And right now, it's kind of like the reverse. It's the Conservatives that have the seat vote now. And he said they're about 10 points up, and he thinks they'll squeak in because of the Ontario being 10 points up. And the last thing I wanted to mention, I shared this footage with Todd. If people don't believe me out there, and they're not going to show it on CTV or CBC, that Pierre Poilievre rally that he had in Ontario in a Liberal stronghold, there was 2,500 people at that rally and another couple thousand that couldn't get in. Like the lineup was like a kilometer long or more. Like it was a city block or more long.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're talking like the length of Agricola Street, and I'm not exaggerating. Like people can go and see the footage for themselves. I'm just saying, like with the data and like the size of the rallies that he's getting, and Mark Carney gets a rally of about 250 people and locks out all the fishermen in Newfoundland that wanted to question him. There's just something that doesn't smell right about things. So I'm just we'll see what happens on election day, and I just want to see if my gut feeling's right, and if it is, it is. If it isn't, it isn't.
Okay, John, thanks for the call, bud. See you soon.
Dude, congrats, buddy.
Okay, take care, pal. 902-405-6000. Paul, hello.
Hello, how you doing?
I'm well, you?
Oh, pretty good. I'd like to reinforce what your caller just said in regards to the size of the crowds for the Conservatives versus the size for Mark Carney.
Mm-hmm.
They both went to two places that are very red. St. John's, Newfoundland, with a Minister of Fisheries, and both ridings are, red and have voted red for a little while.
And a Liberal Premier as well in Newfoundland, of course.
Yeah, and the odd thing is that Mark Carney seemed to then go to like a little town of 5,000 people called Gander. There must be something up with Newfoundland, because it used to be 7 out of 7 places would ridings would vote Liberal, and the Conservatives were getting nowhere as close to it. But I think that ghosting fishermen is not a good thing for a federal aspirant to become prime minister to do in this region. We talk about the entire thing with tariffs in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the fishermen are under pressure from China.
Mm.
and the tariffs in regards to lobsters and snow crab and so on. And that's the making of our Liberal government wanting to protect, for example, a company that just failed for battery production in Ontario. Took $2.5 million, a Swedish company called Northern Volt, I believe it is. And, Carney's holding rallies where it's people that are invited. Pierre Poilievre is basically, taking everybody that will come to his rally. And in fact, the lineup outside the North York one, which is a very red place again, with 2,500 people in, they all got a T-shirt, saying, we're sorry that you couldn't get into the rally. Don't you think there's going to be some big rallies coming up in the GTA for the Conservatives? And it's very reminiscent of what happened down south with Trump and Harris. Harris was basically having to pay, people like Beyonce $100,000 to be the attraction to get an arena packed, totally inorganic. So I'm very optimistic that the people that actually get out and march to a place that would be similar to a polling station are with the Conservatives.
Okay, Paul, appreciate your comments. Thanks for the call, pal. Take care. Hello, Don.
Good day, sir. How you doing?
Well.
Congratulations, Todd, to be. She's got a lovely young man. You got a lovely young woman, okay?
Oh, I'm the lucky one, pal.
I know, I realize that. But Todd, when you come back home, Vanessa will tell you you're invited down for a free meal with a small token. But anyway, down Prospect Road. Anyway, the reason I called you was, here's my prediction for the upcoming election. Poilievre, minority or a small majority. Keep that under lid. And here's the other thing.
Yeah.
My associate down in the States, he's from Canada. He's got 3 food trucks down there. Asked to do another one. He asked me to come down to run 2 more food trucks down in different states. He's welcome down there, and he just kind of wishes that a lot of Canadians would take some of the bitterness out of the ear, because he's down there. He says he doesn't find not a bit of animosity, nothing down there. What's going on? His customers and people down there living. But so anyway, he'll have probably about 7 food trucks down there in different states. They love the seafood, especially from our area. And the taxes, you wouldn't believe it. It's different. And the everything else, a lot of other things else. But so that's what we're planning on doing. But I'm going to stay here with my own, run it. You're invited to come down, honestly, and see what it's all about and all that. But you know what? Just bending the money on both sides, 3 parties. Just do what you're going to do, and keep us safe and all of that. But it's like you said about yesterday or the day before, last week, the media stuff, right? Not saying because you guys, but the media beats it all up, right? About this one and that one and all that. But I wish they just stick to the basics of spending, not overspending, really. That one guy said about overtime, that is a good idea. No income tax, no tax on overtime. Because I think you'll see a lot of underground or shade tree mechanics getting out of that shade tree stuff. Not a lot of them getting out, but would open up for more business. Because it does hurt them, though, really. But all in all, congratulations. And I would, look, I'll tell you what. If I had a free ticket, if I had the money right now to buy a ticket, I wouldn't refuse to go down the States at all. And I lived down in Vegas for a while and worked down there, of course. And I'll tell you, if you can get a chance, go up to the stratosphere, up to the top. If you go up to the top and you get someone to go on the tower, on the walkway, you'll see LA lit up at nighttime. You wouldn't believe it. It's things Vegas go at nighttime. Yeah. But enjoy it and go to the Rio. The big Rio down there. All right. They got blues down there. They got a blues down there on top. Beautiful.
Okay, Don, got a boogie. Yeah. Thanks for the call, bud.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Thanks for the calls, everybody. I didn't get to all of you for that. I apologize. We'll open the phone lines tomorrow. As always, the Science Files with Rob Thacker when we come back. All right, it is Tuesday. That means it's the Science Files with Dr. Rob Thacker, St. Mary's University astrophysicist. And Rob Thacker, always nice to see your shiny face, your smiling face, I should say, not shiny.
My shiny face?
Yeah, not shiny. Yeah, your smiling face.
Sure, it's nice to be here as well.
Yeah, okay. What's that song, Happy Shiny People? Have you ever heard that
Shiny
song?
Happy People.
Shiny Happy People. REM, I believe it was.
Yeah, it was. That was a song of my youth, actually. Yeah.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
Why do you say that?
It was played at, I don't know, discos and so on a lot. So I remember.
They had discos when you were young?
Well, discos, parties, whatever, yeah.
I don't know what disco. Studio 54, or is that what it was? Or
I mean, dude, I grew up in the 80s, so...
Well, I know, but they didn't have discos. We're the same vintage, pal. You're 10 years ahead of that.
I'm, like, from the UK, so we went through, like, dance parties, and then we went into raves. Right?
Raves?
Yeah, raves started, like, in the mid to late 80s in the UK.
Yeah.
Right.
Lots of crazy things went on in raves.
Yeah, although originally it was, like, literally a bunch of kids going to dance in literally barns, how it started in Eastern England. So, but then once the whole scene started,
that's right. Yeah, drugs get involved. And,
yeah,
that's right. Okay, 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us if you'd like to chat with Rob Thacker of the Science Files. Again, astrophysicist, science related, of course. 902-405-6000. Give us a call. We get some time and room for you, and love to hear from you. Rob always loves to chat with you. 902-405-6000. So let's start talking about this story of Sonny Williams and Butch Wilmore finally back to Earth, and the smiles. And I'm telling you, you can imagine how happy you would be getting out of this thing, eh?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things where you're coming down, you've been up in space for a long time. You probably feel pretty yucky when you come back down into gravity, because you've been up there in zero gravity, your muscles have atrophied a little bit, your bones are suffering a bit too, so it's not pleasant. But I will say the movie of them bringing Sunita Williams out and putting her on the stretcher, she was like a smile from one side of her face to the other. She really was grinning, and so you could see they were pleased to be back home, and honestly, not really surprised.
Yeah, I would think that the experimentation of being in space that long would have been worthy, though, right? To document.
Well, I mean, so the thing is, the problem is that when you want to do studies of long-term space, like with the whole Scott Kelly experiment, with the twin experiment and so on. So when you do that, you'll have done a lot of initial experiments to prepare and get the data that you need for doing the stuff while they're on the ISS. And for Williams and Wilmore, they won't have done that because they were only expecting them to be up there for like 8 days, right? And so in this case, they've gone in, they've done some experiments and sort of like tried to work into the crew, as it were, but I don't think there was anything particular that was planned because they just were not expected to be up there for that long.
Yeah. And SpaceX, some good PR for SpaceX here, right?
Yeah, I mean,
as much as people begrudgingly give Elon Musk credit, but you get
sure.
Here.
I mean, they're not Boeing, so they're going to get
so their bolts don't actually fly off.
I mean, I don't know what to say. I mean, people are already sort of like talking about what does this mean for testing Starliner, but they're going to do another test as far as I know. So it's just one of those things that you deal with. I mean, if they had an emergency and they had to evacuate, then they would have come back down. And as everyone knows, it came back down just fine anyway.
Yeah, amazing technology though. Yeah. And a good end to a story. 902-405-6000. Again, give us a buzz if you'd like to chat with Rob Thacker. Again, 902-405-6000. So when it comes to SpaceX and Boeing, which SpaceX is ahead of the curve, way ahead of the curve. Yeah. How far ahead of the curve are they?
So in terms of launch vehicles, I think they are heads and shoulders above pretty much anyone else out there at the moment, right? Especially in terms of cost to orbit. Where they are less far ahead is probably on the detailed engineering around landers and things like that. Although, to be honest, we haven't really built a lunar landing system in decades, right? So there's a lot of learning that has to be done on that. I mean, people say, haven't we done this before? Isn't the knowledge out there? Yes and no, right? You've got to remember that all of the control systems that we used to design, not that I was born in the 60s, but the engineers who were doing the design of the systems in the 60s and 70s had a very specific kind of control technology narrative that is really quite different to the systems design that we have now, right? And so back then, if something went wrong, you would have people debug things and literally going through all of the error codes and so on. And now things are expected to be a lot more in the moment, up the answer comes, processed through the numerical systems to get everything to you as quick as you need it. So it's quite a different way of engineering. But I will say that SpaceX also has this approach of building stuff where it's like build it, break it, and rapid prototyping. And that's new, right? Most developers in the North American space sector have not done that. On the other hand, the Russians did sort of build that way during the 60s and 70s.
Where does SpaceX get its revenue from?
That is a good question. So they have a number of contracts like the ISS supply contract.
Yeah.
They have the contract for building the lunar lander as well. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's actually a good question where all of their money comes from. So there's obviously money coming in from Starlink now and things like that as well.
Being attached to the hip with the President of the United States doesn't hurt.
No, gosh, there's all sorts of questions of conflicts of interest.
Well,
there,
no, but
right?
but it's true though. I mean, it's part of the discussion.
Yeah, but
right?
Musk is incredibly rich.
Yeah,
right. So I mean, he could give millions of dollars away every day of his life, and he would still have billions left. So.
What is his anchor business? Is it indeed SpaceX? Is that his anchor moneymaker?
Well, I mean, other than the obvious answer, you have to really ask him that question. Looking at it from the outside, I don't necessarily think. Sorry, this is going to sound a bit radical, but I think he actually has a concentration issue. He doesn't seem to be able to stay focused on one thing for a very long time.
Yeah.
Right? So he seems to flip from one thing to another on a pretty regular basis. Right? And then if I was a Tesla shareholder, I'd actually be pretty unhappy about that.
I bet you would be, yeah.
Right? So, I know.
Or a Tesla, or a Tesla car dealership owner.
I suppose, funnily enough, if anyone has a pension plan, they probably are a Tesla shareholder by default. But anyway, so it's curious because it's very difficult to really know what his true passion is. I mean, I think if you really look at it, the thing that has been most successful for him in terms of like actually moving forwards, it probably is SpaceX. Because a lot of people were very critical of what they were trying to do at the early stages of landing boosters. I mean, people were literally telling him you won't be able to do it. And they've gone out and done it. Right? Now, they've burnt through a lot of engineers to get there, but they've done it. So that's pretty impressive.
Okay, 902-405-6000. If you'd like to chat with Rob Thacker, again, 902-405-6000. It's the Science Files. Give us a buzz. Again, 902-405-6000. So what's the latest on the mission to the moon? What's the very latest on that?
Well, there's been a lot of questions about whether that would go forward with the Trump administration coming in. And so it seems like they're not going to touch that, right? Which has surprised a few people with all of the Doge and stuff and cost cutting and so on. I mean, I'm a bit surprised, if I'm really honest, because there was a fair amount of discussion about how over budget the Artemis program is. So why would they spare that? It doesn't really fit with the whole narrative, right, that they have going on right now. So nonetheless, it seems to be going forward. And will it be on time? Most indicators point to probably it's going to be delayed a bit, right? Because you've got not just one rocket, you've got two rockets involved in this. So SpaceX is supposed to supply the lander, and that is something that is not a trivial thing to do. It's a very, very big lander. It's 100 times bigger than the lander for Apollo, right?
Wow, 100 times.
Yeah. So we're going from literally being able to put about a ton on the moon to 100 tons.
Wow.
Right. So the fuel costs for that are miles different.
Yeah, the lift.
Right. Yeah, it's miles different.
Lift.
And this is one of the things that, as impressive as Starship is, it's not efficient for going to the moon because you have to put 10 rockets up to refuel it before it goes to the moon. So it's really not a... I don't know. I think once people realize how much refueling has to be done in orbit, there's going to be a lot of pushback on it.
Well, Interesting. 902-405-6000. Hello, Dave.
Yes, hello, gentlemen. One of my favorite topics of late is Elon Musk.
So, do you know what he's thinking?
I like the way you're treading carefully. Yeah. He's very controversial for sure. Attention span, but I think most geniuses do. They're tinkering in a lot of things at once.
They call it eccentricity. I do believe eccentric is
absolutely sure.
There's different types of genius, though. There's some people who are like super focused as well, though.
Sure. They say there's a fine line between a genius and somebody who's crossed the line as a nut job, I suppose.
Yeah, you know what it is, and you know what it is. If you have money, you're eccentric. If you don't, you're a loony.
I
still think the origin of that is music.
I could use a few more loonies, I'll tell you. But anyways, having said that, I've been watching him. He announced this new Tesla Optimus Bot Gen 3 robot, and it's been unveiled. I think the last few days he's unveiling this robotic. It's a robot. It looks humanoid, I guess, to a certain degree. You've probably seen it, Dr. Thacker.
I've seen pictures of it, but I haven't really actually seen a news story about it.
And if you listen to what he says in the next really 2 to 3 to 5 years, people will want one of these, and I guess they'll be under $30,000 a piece. They'll do all kinds of things. I mean, we're there anyways. I mean, you can look at car factories manufacturing vehicles and what have you, and let's face it, this is moving very fast right now, and people will be able to own these, he says, for around $30,000. And of course, we want these things, right? We go out and buy our iPhones, our smartphones, and TVs as quick as they come on the shelf, right? We don't even think. We don't care. We just want instant stuff, right? So I found that very fascinating, and also with the bringing back the astronauts was amazing, and he had a great deal of to do with that, regardless what anybody says, really, and safe and sound, and that was truly amazing. I think I spoke about this about 2 or 3 weeks ago, about how they were stranded up there, and voila, he brought them back. And nerve-wracking, of course, but...
I mean, they did have resupply missions already planned anyway, so it wasn't that much of a stretch. I mean, initially, remember, he did sort of say, we can bring them down, as sort of like, we'll send a mission up there straight away, and NASA said, no, we actually have to follow the mission schedule, right?
And I think because of these robots, Tesla, I think stocks have just gone back up quite a bit. I mean, I always say when stocks are down, like Tesla, maybe it's the time, there's always a silver lining to everything. I don't recommend anybody do whatever, but, when stocks are down, that's the time to buy, right? But these robotics, and I don't know how you feel about that, because I know you're very cautious. I think I even talked to you about, smartphones and what we're inviting in our homes now.
Well, that's a different issue. That's about addictive interfaces. With robots and AI in particular, the issue is like, how good is it actually going to be? That's the key thing. And believe me, with a technology like this, I mean, anyone who's seen the Boston Dynamics videos knows that, eventually they can teach robots to do some pretty incredible things. But that learning process isn't always a simple thing, and it can take time. So again, I'm a careful person, so I want to sort of see details about what's actually the Tesla bot is capable of.
Right.
But I'm always cautious. I mean, this is the thing with ChatGPT. It does a lot of things quite well, but if you give it something that's truly new, it stumbles all over it, right? And anyone who's worked with it extensively knows that. If you give it something that's really new, no sort of prior thinking on it, whatever, it doesn't have anything to train on previously, so it's inevitably going to come up short. I mean, it can crunch a few things out there and guess, but it doesn't have the same kind of intuition that humans have developed over time. Now, will we be able to put that in an algorithm sometime? Maybe, right? Maybe symbolic computation will help us do that, but we're not there at the moment.
No, but I mean, you look at these drones and the sophistication of these drones that we're using. Basically, they're going to be controlling like any warfare, I would think, and they're doing it now, right?
And you should be worried about that.
Of course, and I'm thinking with the robotic thing, whatever, and we can say it's all Elon's fault for this or that. But I think China is probably moving just as fast as we are when it comes to robotic technology. Absolutely. I mean, we're in a race right now for the next...
Yeah, but that's not a reason to actually go headlong into the race without looking at what's happening. And I really sort of have a problem with that.
Right. I mean, you can go on TV now, and there's so much AI, like as far as videos and what have you, and some of them say it's AI, but let's face it, we are not regulating anything right now, and I think that's the point I'm making here. Like, is it too late, maybe, to regulate? To like, where are these things?
But I mean, one of the key things is, Dave. I mean, you've hit on the key issue here. Is people say don't regulate because we're in a race, right? And the impact of this going wrong is something that both the Chinese people and everyone else has to care about. Right.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know if it'll be the end of us, but I mean, look, we do. Absolutely. I mean, we've invited, and again, that comes with social media as well. Where do you draw that line for freedom of speech and what have you? And it seems like that line's crossed all the time, but where do you draw that line? And that's where we're at. I think it's unbelievable where we're at in history, I think, and just in the world of moving forward to something that, well, you know yourself, you can see what's going on around us.
Yeah, I could talk a lot about this, but I think we need to go to a break.
Yeah, we need a break, absolutely.
Right. Okay, guys.
Okay, thanks, Dave. All right, take care. Guys. Right. Okay, there you go. So now you're a producer, are you, Rob?
I can read the tea leaves.
There you go. 902-405-6000. It's like, hey, listen, stay in your own lane, pal. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with the Science Files when we come back. All right, it's the Science Files. It's Rob Thacker. Give us a buzz. We got open lines for you, folks. Rob wants to talk to you. We need your call. Give us a buzz. 902-405-6000. While we wait for your call, and an email question. This from Mark says, does Rob think that one day we will be able to use gravitational lensing to view distant planets that could hold life? Do you know what that means?
Yeah, I do. So, the challenge with that is that, so let me explain gravitational lensing. So gravity can be on really large scale so strong that it literally bends light and it will focus it and magnify it, right? And so we see this with light from very, very distant galaxies around clusters of galaxies of all things, right? So literally when you see, James Webb is brilliant at showing this. You see a cluster of galaxies, looks really beautiful, and then there are these weird sort of like segments and around the edge, crescents around the edge, which are all actually galaxies that are just sort of like being lensed. And so the challenge for using that to view planets is it's something that has to be done really on large scales, right? And so even though you might get magnification factors of 7, 8, 9, 10, you're not going to get it for planets in our galaxy, which is really what we need. We want to look at it and use this kind of gravitational lensing to see things in our galaxy. So it's not really that likely. I mean, every now and again, you get what's called microlensing, where you get a tiny lensing event, but those are unpredictable. They happen by smaller objects, and they happen fairly irregularly. We have to do searches for them. And then again, they're not going to be the kind of things you want. You want to be able to look at something that's there for a long period of time. And that's just not going to happen on the scales that you need for seeing planets.
Okay. Patrick, hello.
Hello, how are you, gentlemen?
We're well.
Great.
That's good. It's been a while. Dr. Rob, I got a couple of things here real quick. Now, rocket launches, or when they launch into orbit, this came up in one of the communities I follow online. The rockets, when they go up, they go on a sort of a curvature as opposed to straight up.
Yep.
Is there a reason for that?
Yeah.
There must be.
So most of the time, that's because you want to go into orbit, right? So if you want to go into orbit, you can't go straight up. You've got to put a sort of like azimuthal component of the velocity in there, so you're going around. And so that will mean that as you go up, you'll start turning over and turning over and turning over until once you get to the orbital position, you're actually just basically pointing straight around the Earth.
Right. So what would happen if they went straight up? They just keep on going right out into space or into the...
You keep on going till you run out of gas.
Right.
Right, basically. And then you come back down because you won't have any transverse motion to take you into an orbit. So you're going to be on basically what we call a radial trajectory. So you'll go up and you'll come straight back down.
Like a bullet.
Well,
yeah.
Unless you break the Earth's gravity pull, I guess, and then you just keep on going until something else grabs you.
Well, right. If you had a strong enough rocket that you could keep on going, then yeah, once you got away from the Earth, presumably at some point you're going to get into the gravitational attraction of another system.
Yeah. Honestly, I wasn't going to call today, but you sounded like you were desperate for callers, so I wanted to bring this one to you as well.
Patrick, we're never desperate. We're eager. Listen. Did you have another question? Because if you did, I'm going to put you on hold because we need a break. Do you mind holding?
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. Stick right there. 902-405-6000. Yes, we don't want to sound desperate. We want to sound eager. Desperation is never good.
Am I on Tinder?
yeah, that's right. 902-405-6000. We'll be back.
The more you...
All right, it's the Science Files with Rob Thacker. Give us a call, 902-405-6000. Again, the Science Files with Rob Thacker, astrophysicist. Ready to take your questions, your comments. We're not desperate, folks. We're eager. Right, Rob?
The Desperate Files.
That's right, the Desperate Files. No, folks. Give us a call. In all seriousness, Rob's ready. And you do enjoy this very much, Rob.
No, I do. I mean, that's why I do it, literally, because I enjoy talking to people about science. So.
Exactly, when they call.
When they call, yeah.
All right, Patrick. Hello. It's back to you, Patrick.
Sorry about that. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to get you all going.
No
fine,
no sweat.
It's fine.
Might as well face reality.
Swipe left.
This one isn't really even a question for you, Dr. Rob.
Sure.
I'm just wondering if you were aware of this. It's all about the flurfs, the flat earthers. Apparently somebody in Britain with a lot of money decided that he was going to take flat earthers down to Antarctica to show them the 24-hour sun because they don't believe, I guess, in one of their models that a 24-hour sun is true or whatever happened. But anyway, it was called the final experiment. I don't know if you've heard about it.
I haven't.
About it. It's all over.
I mean,
it's pretty funny.
What strikes me as amusing about that is I would really like to be a flat earther for a day because it would be fun to go down to Antarctica and see that. That's an amazing place. Right.
Yeah. Well, I would have loved to have gone too, really.
Yeah, I mean,
Anyway,
I honestly, why would you... you sure this isn't a hoax story? Because why would you spend money on this? I don't see the point.
No, it's absolutely true. It is all. There's one guy that is online. He's Simon Dan has dedicated his life to fighting flat Earth, and he was part of this whole experiment thing going on. I don't know why you would spend money on it, like you said, but they did.
Well, the depressing thing about that is, to be quite frank, there's a hell of a lot more important things to worry about than fighting flat Earth.
Yeah, I won't disagree with you on that. Anyway, I just thought I'd throw it out there, give you something to look.
All right.
About.
Thanks, Pat.
Thanks.
Have a good day.
Okay, take care, pal. 902-405-6000. Harvey, hello.
Hi, can you hear me?
We got you.
I have a question for Dr. Thacker.
Okay. Sure.
Dark energy has been in the news. There was report came out, said there is not proof, but there's an indication that maybe dark energy may be weakening over time.
Yep.
And in addition to that, a question about the security of funding for research like that. So could you tell me something maybe we haven't heard about this dark energy?
Sure. I mean, so this all came out last week, and so the what's called the DESI experiment, which is on the Mayal telescope at Kitt Peak. So they've spent a few years now measuring what we call the baryon acoustic oscillation, which is really a fundamental scale in the universe that goes back to the earliest billions of years ago, a few 100,000 years after the Big Bang. And literally there was a scale that patches in the universe tended to oscillate on, and they have a very characteristic scale. And so if you know that scale, then you can go and measure it, right? And then what's happened is, as you measure further and further away, you have the ability to tell what's happening with the so-called dark energy component of the universe. And that controls how we diverge from a certain speed of moving away as we get further and further away. And what they found is that there seems to be a slight weakening of this with time, which is quite unexpected. But here's the thing. Having studied the paper, when you look at their data, the error bars that they have still overlap with the regular, simple, take Einstein's cosmological constant prediction, and that's what you get. So it's really something that, although there's interest in this potentially being something unusual, because let's be honest, if there was an indication that dark energy was changing with time, that would be a really big news story. But at the moment, it's a fairly, I don't want to say it's fairly weak, but it's pretty middling as a detection, and they've deliberately not stuck their heads out and say, look, we're really confident in this. And so I think people are finding reasons to talk about it because it's a fantastic measurement, don't get me wrong. But at the end of the day, I would really sort of like suggest people be a little bit skeptical about it because we've got to do quite a bit more measurement yet.
Yeah, skepticism is warranted, but sometimes it encourages, people don't like to get laughed at. Sometimes something like this encourages theorists to actually speak out and voice some ideas about theories they have that might otherwise they would keep to themselves. So has any interesting theories about what dark energy is come out?
There's a lot of different theories out there. I mean, part of the challenge that we have is really that theorists are so good at coming up with different ideas that you can very easily sort of like fill up pages of journals with papers on what this could possibly be, right? And that is the challenge.
I came across one the other day that said black holes are breeding dark energy. I would be. That was wild.
Yeah, I would be very, very skeptical of anything like that. That's probably a unique, particular solution in general relativity that's being drawn from. But to come back to your other question about the security of funding, I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I know very, very good people who've been fired in the States, right? And that's really quite concerning, right? Like very good people. And so there's a lot of worry about what this means. What does it mean for international relationships that Canada has with US facilities and things like that? And so, yeah, it is a concern. Now, all of that said and done, astronomy is a subject that has a lot of romance around it, and it's one of those things that goes back and harkens back to the space age as well. And will that be enough to keep things going forward? I don't know, but I would be very concerned about, or I would be more concerned about the cuts in health funding and things like that. Those things are absolutely fundamental to a functioning society, and so I worry about those more than I do about worries of cuts to astronomy.
Those things are hard to get back.
Very much so. I mean, if you have very good people who are mobile, I mean, I hate to point this out, but this is one of the reasons why scientists are paid a lot all around the world is because they're mobile, right? And so people will compete for them. There's regular salary competitions. People get one offer and then they go and sort of like play it off against someone else to improve the offer. And so that happens. And so with these people who are very good, once they get laid off, for many of them, they won't have too much of a struggle going and finding an alternative position somewhere else. There will be some people who are maybe just not quite good enough to be able to do that, right? Particularly at the later stages of career, right? Those people may actually end up retiring early. That's a possibility. But for the younger people who are just starting out, we're really expecting we may see a really significant change in what's called the postdoctoral researchers.
Yeah, my grandson has just started down the track towards his PhD, and it's really worrisome.
Yeah, so I think in Canada things look reasonably okay, but I don't know. I mean, a lot of these things are at the whims of the government. This is one of the things that people perhaps don't know about, that science funding for many years, there's something called the Haldane Principle, which goes all the way back to the end of the First World War and Lord Haldane in the UK. And they wrote this essay about how the UK should fund science and so on. And so basically they said, look, we as politicians and I think he was actually a member of the House of Lords, said, look, we don't understand science, and so we shouldn't be the ones saying how science funds should be spent. We think that there should be expert panels who decide how that money is spent. And so that was how money got spent for a very long time. And then what we've seen in the last sort of like 40 or 50 years is a view that actually, no, you can use a more sort of what I call engineering approach to science funding, where you kind of direct it into certain areas in the hopes that it will create wealth and so on. And that works, but the problem with it is, as you probably guessed, there are going to be things that won't get discovered because of those choices that may actually have been great long-term discoveries for wealth creation in the long term. So there's all sorts of questions about how that actually plays out and how efficient it is.
Oh, yeah. We were waiting for AI for a generation.
Yeah.
And now we have just a little bit of AI, and it's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I will say there's an awfully large amount of hype around AI right now. I mean, if you look at what it's capable of doing, there's kind of like, this is going to sound terrible because don't get me wrong, I use AI for some things, right? But there are these feelings that it can do everything and it can't. With new stuff, it's really just not very good. Anything that's been done before, it's brilliant. It's got that in the training bank. It can help you, right? And so it can help with productivity of programming and so on. Although not everyone I know who's an expert programmer likes it. Some people don't like it. But I've seen it work pretty well and pretty effectively for some coding tasks. So there's limits to it. And I certainly wouldn't want it sort of trawling through data, because that's really what people who control these systems want to do. They want to be able to train it on more and more stuff, because we've pretty much maxed out what we can do in terms of training on the internet.
Yeah, I've used it. I love it for questions about history, and it's great for giving you the vocabulary to actually find an answer. But I'm about 1 for 3 on tough questions. It lies authoritatively.
It simply doesn't know that it's wrong, right? That's the best way to think about it, right? It simply doesn't know that it's wrong. Yeah.
It's artificial intelligence, but there's really no intelligence behind it. It's like glorified spell check.
So the way we describe it...
go ahead.
Sure. The way we describe it is it's not a replacement for expertise. It doesn't, at the moment, have the kind of reasoning that an expert has, right? It has encyclopedic recall of things that have happened. That's very important and very useful in many situations. But in terms of having the intuition to build new approaches, it's just not very good at that at the moment. And I'm always careful to clarify at the moment, but it's certainly not a replacement for many tasks in science.
Okay, Harry, we got to go. Thanks for the call.
Thank you.
All right, take care, pal. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. The Science Files with Rob Thacker, St. Mary's University astrophysicist, continues. Give us a call at 902-405-6000. Hello, Tyler.
Hey, how's it going today? I heard you guys calling in reinforcements. So
that's right. We sent out the call.
Thank you.
We sent out the call, and you're listening.
Put up the bat signal.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I showed up in my cape, so here I am. All right. So I have a couple of questions, depending on how lit up your switchboard is. I'll start with my first one. Might seem a little silly, but is there magnetism in space?
Yes, there is. So, and that's seen on very, very large scales in galaxies. And so we see this with what we call something fancy called the Faraday rotation. But basically, you can see how the magnetic field is influencing the light that goes through a galaxy, right? Or radio waves, I should say. And so we see that. And so it's much like electric fields and magnetic fields will go through the vacuum of space. I mean, that's something that we know. We see evidence of that all the time. That's how you can have action at a distance between two magnets, for example. So yeah, there is magnetism in space, sure.
Okay, and patent pending on this, don't take my idea, but is there any way to possibly utilize that magnetism for perhaps travel or for sending objects out rather than home? You know, if you think, like trains here, they levitate, it seems like kind of a...
Oh, I see what you're saying. So,
Patent pending.
In a funny kind of way, the thing that's simpler is to use light itself. And so solar sails, that is a real possibility. I've not seen anyone, because what you're talking about would be what we would call a magneto-hydrodynamic approach. And I've not seen anyone talking about that, but that's not to say in certain circumstances there isn't a lot of energy there. So, for example, during aurora, we know there's a fair amount of energy there, and we know when we have geomagnetic storms, for example, then we can have an awful lot of energy dumped into power lines. So there is a fair amount of energy and magnetic energy involved in solar flares. The question would be how you could utilize that into a propulsion system. Yeah. And I think the other thing why you wouldn't want to do that is it's just so unpredictable, right? You can't have a propulsion system when you don't know whether your source is going to be operating or not. That's not going to be great, is it?
Absolutely, yeah.
So I think that's the main challenge there.
Gotcha. One more question for you, if that's okay. Not really an astrophysics kind of question, but I recently read an article in New York that the Delaware and Catskill reservoirs they're very concerned about their drinking water down there because of the salinity and salt from road salt and from winter operations and stuff. Just wondering how much of an issue is that? If you can answer it, and if you can't, just that's fine. But how much of an issue is that up here, and what could be done about it?
So, in actual fact, we've had my partner, in fact, has been thinking about looking into this a little bit. So, I think there was a research project looking at what happens with road salt wash because once it gets washed off the roads, it has to go somewhere, and of course, it goes into basically whatever streams are nearby to the road. And so on. So that is a real concern. And it's something that honestly can build up, right? So I'm not surprised to hear that this is a significant issue. And so the reaction to it has been to try and minimize salt usage and also look at alternatives, right? So I can't tell you off the top of my head what they decided about Nova Scotia, but it certainly was an issue, right? And so you can say, what about using grit or something like that? And the challenge with using grit is that then you're putting particulate into the drainage systems, right? And so then you can have a problem with that. I mean, they use grit out west a lot, right? Like in Edmonton, they would always just put basically grit down, and that would be fine. And honestly, they have to do that because salt stops working below like -10 anyway. So they use grit a lot, but it's a challenge. And so a number of people have looked at different things. And I remember that people were even looking at something that was related to derivatives from beetroot, if you can believe it. And that was one possibility as well. But it was literally you had to find the chemical that would do something to break the hydrogen bonds and so make the ice into a liquid, but it's not a trivial thing to do. And really, at the end of the day, the answer is most of the time just use less.
Right. I know that they've used the beet solution in Ontario. Yeah. It actually stains the roads red a little bit, but the salt going into the water supply is definitely a concern and should be a bigger news story, I think, up here. Because of how prevalent we're using it. And I mean, you can just drive down, some country roads sometimes, and you see browning on the roadside pine needles and stuff like that in the wintertime, and that's from salt. Yeah, I mean it's doing a lot more damage. I mean, we're talking about pollution and CO2 emissions and EVs and all this stuff. It's like, well, maybe we just need to drive less.
Well, I'm this is something that having a partner who's looked at that, I am sympathetic about, but I would just sort of say that I don't put rolled salt in the same position as I would say CO2 and global warming, right? I think
fair enough,
right? But at the end of the day, yes, it is an issue, and it's very significant for. I mean, people may say, "Who cares?" But you take something like frogs, which are extremely sensitive to salinity, right? Extremely sensitive, right? And so you can have a very significant impact. I know someone was studying the impact on salamanders, right? And so we tend to sort of like forget that all of these things actively contribute to the ecosystem in one way or another. We live on a series of basically relationships. And if you impact anywhere within that food web, you can have a really significant impact. And the other thing is, goodness me, we were actually going through a situation where we were having a shortage of salt, which kind of blew my mind when that happened a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's make sure we protect the frogs too, because who wants the mosquitoes?
Yeah, very much. Right. I mean, a lot of people we live in the city, we put PT in to keep down the mosquito populations, but as soon as you get outside the city, that's not the case.
Thanks, Tyler.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, take care. Let's get one more in quickly. Colin, quickly if you can, please.
Hi there. You guys are talking about dark energy. I recently heard on Quirks and Quarks about a new model that kind of fits into general relativity called timescape model, which basically says there is no dark energy. I'm wondering if Dr. Rob heard about that from the University of Christchurch.
So I haven't.
University of Canterbury in Christchurch.
I haven't. I'm going to be honest with you. It's ironic because I'm teaching general relativity this term, but I haven't heard much about this, and so I'm always a little bit skeptical, right? And so but I don't want to be too negative, right? So it's a serious enough situation that it has to be looked in more detail. But it's been around for a few years, right? This idea isn't really that new. Certainly, I know people were talking about it in the 2021 around that time.
Okay, neat.
I mean, actually, I've just Googled it. It actually goes back even further. So it goes back to 2007, right? And so if it's in homogeneous cosmology. Okay, so this is really trying to take the concept of things being different on very, very large scales, enormous scales, producing different types of behaviors. And that's not necessarily unplausible, right? But the problem... Go ahead.
It kind of described it as basically different time zones within space, and because we're kind of being blinded by our density that we have in our perception, we see the universe as like 14 point some billion years old, but in the vast emptiness between galaxies or whatever, you could be somewhere else and it could be 21 billion years. Like it basically described it as different time zones in the universe, and it explains the expansion or the acceleration that we see. And I thought that was kind of interesting because it still fits in with
So the challenge with all of this is going to be making sure that it reconciles with both the CMB results and the dark energy results. I think that's not going to be a trivial thing to do, right? But again, I've seen discussions about this kind of concept for quite some time, but it's not necessarily easy to figure out precisely how this is going to appear once you put specific observers in this particular cosmology. But I don't think this is something that we would dismiss in any way as being crackpot or anything like that. It's just an interesting idea.
Okay, Colin, thanks for the call. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it very much, my friend.
Thanks, everyone, for the help.
Indeed. That is Rob Thacker. That's Science Files. We do that each and every Tuesday. And thanks again for all your participation. Thanks for listening. Thanks to Vanessa Veinotte as well on the other side of the glass at the control boards. Doing a fine job as always. We're back tomorrow at 10 o'clock. See you then.